You're nothing but a cheap distraction. Her voice sliced through the air, sharp and frigid. A scheming little gold digger playing a twisted, long game. Trust me, once I'm through, he'll see you for what you really are. Margaret's words hit me like a winter storm, her face a mask of icy calm, as if she were commenting on a passing cloud. I sat there, paralyzed. My fingers clamped around my coffee mug so hard I thought it might shatter. I wanted to fire back, to defend myself, but my tongue stayed glued to the roof of my mouth. Back then, I naively believed politeness and grace might eventually thaw her heart. How wrong I was. My name is Emily Carter. I'm 26. And I was engaged to Daniel, hands down the most incredible man I'd ever known. Daniel hailed from a world of privilege, one I'd never even dreamed of touching. His family owned a sprawling real estate dynasty, and he was next in line to inherit its throne. But that wasn't why I loved him. I grew up in a rundown but warm home, scraping by as a preschool teacher, carving out my own path. Daniel really saw me for who I was, not what I lacked. For the first time, I felt like I mattered. But his mother, Margaret, loathed me from the moment we met. To her, I was a predator, a leech after their fortune, and no amount of kindness or respect from me could change her verdict. Margaret's contempt wasn't subtle. It seeped into every glance, every word. She'd toss out cutting remarks about my thrift store clothes, my sweet but rough demeanor, or how Daniel deserved someone polished enough to navigate their elite world. I brushed it off, convincing myself it was just a test, but the sting burrowed deep. Around Daniel, she was a saint, warm, doting, the picture-perfect mother. She never attacked me outright in his presence, but her frosty stares and veiled jabs spoke volumes. When I tried to tell Daniel, he'd shrug it off. She just needs time, Emily. She's protective, that's all. I wanted to believe him, so I swallowed my doubts. But as our wedding loomed closer, Margaret's venom sharpened, her subtle digs morphing into outright assaults. One night, with Daniel out of earshot, she ambushed me in the dim hallway of their mansion. "You're not fooling anyone," she hissed, her voice low and lethal. "Daniel might be blind, but I see through you, a desperate little nobody clinging to the first rich man who glances her way." Pathetic. I stood there, stunned, my mind scrambling for a reply. I wasn't after his money. I'd never given her a shred of reason to think that, but Margaret didn't care about facts. She'd already sentenced me. I told myself I could endure it. Daniel and I had love, and that was enough. But her relentless campaign, the whispered insults, the way she twisted every moment to frame me as the villain, started to erode my resolve. I never imagined she'd take it as far as she did. One evening, after another bruising clash with Margaret, I called my best friend, Lauren, my lifeline in every storm. "I don't know how much more I can take," I confessed, pacing my cramped apartment, my voice trembling. "Margaret treats me like I'm a con artist just for loving Daniel. She's waiting for me to slip so she can gloat." Lauren sighed over the phone. "That woman's got serious issues, Emily. You've done nothing wrong. You've practically killed yourself trying to please her. It's not your fault she's trapped in her ivory tower." I collapsed onto my sagging couch, rubbing my pounding temples. "It's not just the insults. She's feeding Daniel lies about me, and I don't know how long I can keep fighting this." Lauren's tone softened. "Have you told him everything?" I faltered. "Not really. I've hinted at it, but he dismisses it. He doesn't see her when he's not around." "You need to tell him," she urged. "He loves you. He deserves to know." "I know," I whispered, "but what if it just makes everything worse?" The days that followed were a slow grind of dread. I tried to muster the nerve to confront Daniel about his mother, but every time I opened my mouth, I froze. He was already juggling so much: his career, our wedding plans, his fragile sobriety. I couldn't bear to pile more onto him. One night, I met Lauren at our usual coffee haunt, desperate for her clarity. "Am I losing it?" I asked, stirring my tea as my chest tightened. "Margaret's gotten worse, like she's gearing up for something big. But I can't pin it down." Lauren glanced up from her phone, her reply sluggish. "I don't know, Emily. Maybe you're reading too much into it. She's his mom. Moms can be overbearing." Her words threw me. Lauren had always been my fiercest ally against Margaret. "You really think I'm overreacting?" She shrugged, sipping her latte. "She hasn't done anything drastic. Maybe she's just protective. Like Daniel says." Her dismissal stung, but I chalked it up to a bad day. Later, I'd realized that was the moment the threads began to fray. Over the next few weeks, Lauren drifted away. She dodged my calls, texted back hours late, or not at all. When we spoke, she was distracted, barely hearing me out. I tried not to take it personally. Life gets messy, right? But it gnawed at me. She'd been my anchor. Now, when I needed her most, she was a ghost. Meanwhile, Margaret smelled blood in the water. She cranked up her charm around Daniel, sowing doubt with every syrupy word. I caught her once, murmuring to him, "You need someone who fits our world, Daniel, someone who lifts you up, not drags you down." The walls closed in tighter, and for the first time, I felt utterly alone. Then came the tea invitation. "Mom wants us over," Daniel said one afternoon, his voice tinged with hope. "She says she's ready to try. Maybe she's coming around." I didn't buy it, not for a second, but for Daniel, I agreed. If there was even a sliver of a chance, I'd take it. When we arrived at her sprawling estate, my nerves were razor-sharp. Margaret greeted us with her practiced smile, but as I stepped into the living room, my gut plummeted. Lauren sat there, perched on the couch, sipping tea like she owned the place. "Emily," she chirped, feigning shock, her eyes flitting to Margaret. What a surprise. I was just catching up with Margaret. Daniel frowned, puzzled but unbothered. I wasn't. "What's going on?" I demanded. My voice taut. Margaret's smile stretched wider. "Oh, I thought it'd be nice for us all to chat. Your dear friend Lauren's been so helpful lately." The air thickened, my instincts screaming. "I didn't know you two were friends," I said, my confusion sharpening into suspicion. Margaret's eyebrow arched, her tone syrupy. "Oh, we've crossed paths. Lauren's been a gem, someone who truly cares about Daniel." My stomach twisted. I turned to Lauren, searching for answers, but she wouldn't meet my gaze. "Yeah," she mumbled, "it just happened." "Margaret's been great." "Great at what?" I thought. Daniel sat there, oblivious, sipping his tea as the tension coiled tighter. Margaret set her cup down with a delicate clink, her voice dripping with intent. "Since we're all here, let's clear the air. Lauren, why don't you tell Daniel what you told me?" My heart crashed to the floor. "What are you talking about?" I snapped, my eyes darting between them. Lauren hesitated, her fingers twitching around her cup, then looked at Daniel with staged sorrow. "I didn't want to say this, but I can't hold it in anymore. I saw Emily with another guy." The room went dead silent, save for the thunder of my pulse. "What?" I choked out. "Lauren, that's a lie." Daniel's face drained of color, his eyes locking onto mine, raw with hurt. "Emily," Lauren pressed on, her voice quivering with fake anguish. "It was a few weeks ago. I was downtown, getting coffee, and I saw her with this guy, laughing, holding hands, kissing. It was obvious. I didn't want to believe it, but I couldn't unsee it. That never happened." I cried, my chest caving in. "You're lying. Why are you doing this?" She finally met my eyes. And for a split second, I glimpsed guilt, then it vanished. "I'm not lying," she said softly. I couldn't let Daniel stay in the dark. "A lie," I screamed, tears spilling over. "You're my best friend." "You know I'd never." Daniel shot to his feet, the chair screeching against the floor. "You're sure?" he demanded of Lauren, his voice shaking with fury. "Positive," she replied, resolute. I saw it myself. I turned to him, desperate. "Daniel, please, you have to believe me. I love you." "I've never." "Get out," he roared, his face twisted with betrayal. "I can't even look at you." My legs buckled, but I grabbed my bag and stumbled out, tears blinding me as my world imploded. The days after were a haze of agony and unanswered pleas. I bombarded Daniel with calls and texts. "Please, just talk to me. You know me. I'd never hurt you." But they sank into silence. I pounded on his apartment door, hearing faint shuffles inside. But he never answered. Lauren ignored me too, her betrayal a knife twisting deeper. I couldn't fathom it. My best friend, my confidant, torching my life. Sleepless nights bled into each other as I replayed that scene, Daniel's devastated face haunting me. But it wasn't just me she'd broken. He was unraveling too. Whispers from mutual friends painted a grim picture. Daniel skipping work, ditching his sobriety meetings, drifting into dark corners of the city. He was drowning, and I was powerless. Then, one stormy night, a knock jolted me from my stupor. I opened the door to find Margaret, a shadow of her former self, hair wild, eyes swollen, face streaked with tears. "Emily," she rasped, her voice raw. "I need your help." I stared, incredulous. Why are you here? She barged in, wringing her hands. It's Daniel. He's falling apart, using again. I don't know what to do. I crossed my arms, bitterness surging. And what am I supposed to do? You made sure I'm nothing to him. She crumpled into a chair, sobbing. I was wrong about everything. I thought I was saving him, but I've destroyed you both. Her confession hit like a freight train. I lied, she whispered. About the affair, Lauren, all of it. I paid her $100,000 to lie. I wanted you gone, Emily. I thought you'd ruin him. Rage flared. You paid her? You shredded his life, my life, over your twisted hunch. She nodded, weeping harder. I see it now. You're the best thing for him. Please, help him. He loves you. You're his only hope. I stood there, reeling. The woman who'd orchestrated my nightmare was begging me to fix it. He talks about you, she pressed, frantic. Even at his lowest, it's you he wants. My resolve wavered. I'll help, I said, voice trembling, but not for you, for Daniel. What you did is unforgivable. Relief flooded her face. Thank you. I'll tell him everything. The next day, she drove me to his apartment, the silence between us suffocating. When he opened the door, gaunt, hollow-eyed, his glare cut through us. What do you want? He snapped. Margaret faltered, then spilled it all. I lied, Daniel. About Emily. I paid Lauren to say she cheated. I was wrong. His jaw dropped. You what? She sobbed. I thought I was protecting you. Forgive me. He turned to me, guilt crashing over him. Emily, is this true? I nodded, tears falling. I tried to tell you. A shaky smile broke through his pain. You never gave up on me. He pulled me close, trembling, and kissed me, a lifeline in the wreckage. I'm so sorry, he whispered. We're here now, I replied, clinging to hope. The scars remain, Lauren's betrayal, Margaret's schemes, but Daniel and I are rebuilding. Margaret's trying to atone. And while trust is a distant shore, I don't hate her anymore. Daniel's fighting for his sobriety, and I'm with him, step by step. Love's messy, brutal, but ours is real, and that's enough.